So Sarah's grandma and family is from Curtis Creek in Old Fort, North Carolina. They've been up here for a long, long time. And so now we're just going to have a conversation and talk a little bit chronologically about the history starting from the very beginning all the way up until now. All right, so what is your name and how long have you been on Curtis Creek?
Well, I am Lillian Delane Sawyer Dottridge. I was born on the creek in 1941 in the family home, which is still exists, and we moved to Michigan when I was 2 years old because of the war, and times here were very lean, so we went to Michigan where my dad could get work along with a bunch of my uncles, and lived there for 18 years. I married and then moved to Rocky Mount, North Carolina, and I lived there for 32 years. And then I moved back here in 1995 after my mother had a stroke, and I lived with her 2 years. And while I was living with her, I got a job with McDowell County as a librarian, and I just retired 6 years ago after 20 years with branch manager of the Old Fort Branch Library, McDowell County, North Carolina.
So we've got a bunch of books and pictures and all kind of stuff that she's put together doing research. I guess since the 80s? Is that when you started?
80, I think 84.
Okay. So we're going to just kind of do a summary of your family history. So what's the earliest relative? And I guess just kind of walk us through.
Okay, in 1749, George H. Silver came over on the ship Speedwell and went into port in Pennsylvania of German pioneers. And he was married, and they settled in Canona Valley, which is south of here.
Do you know what their motive was to come from Europe?
Well, they were all immigrants, and the ship brought all the immigrants over. There was quite a few on the ship, and the story has it that he met a woman on the ship, and they married as soon as they landed. But I have no documentation on that. But the Silver generations began with the gentleman Silver and Griffin. Her surname was Griffin.
So when the Silvers came to the United States, how did they pick North Carolina?
Well, I imagine the settlements that from Pennsylvania migrated south during the 1700s. A lot of migrations from the north as they come in on ships, migrated to the south to Kentucky, Virginia, Tennessee, and North Carolina, and on down through Georgia, according to history. George Silver the First was actually the beginning of the line that I have researched. And he married Elizabeth Margaret Ellis, and I don't have a date on that, but he was born in 1720. So evidently he was born and came over on the ship.
As that family went on, did anyone have any active roles in the Revolutionary War?
Yes. Several of the Silver boys were in the Revolutionary War. I have no documentation other than word of mouth. There was a book titled Silver, Our Pioneer's Ancestry, compiled by John Silver Harris in 1987, that gives excerpts of George Silver the Elder and George Silver the Younger. In retrospect, how you say it, the book Nancy's Story enlightens all of the ancestry of George Silver, and it goes on to...
Have you ever got a copy of that book?
No.
Do you, through the hearsay that you heard, do you believe that they fought for the Loyalists or the Patriots?
I have no record of anything like that.
Interesting. So, all right, well, let's go after the Revolutionary War. What did the, in between, let's say, the Revolutionary War and the Civil War, what did the family do then?
Well, George Silver the Elder came to this country from the Old World in 1749 as a young man. He was of German Dutch ancestry and came presumably from the Rhineland, but of his previous home and life we know very little. On the ship coming over, according to tradition, he met and fell in love with a fellow immigrant, an English woman by the name of Ellis. Likewise, on landing, they married and settled in Pennsylvania. Now, from there, it jumps to the Woodies. Heirs of the Silver line is Greenberry Silver, who had a son with Sarah Woody, and that began the line of Woodies, and I've traced them back to the 1600s.
Wow.
From my grandfather back to Henry Woody. He was born in 1640 in St. Peter's, New Kent, Virginia, and he had 3 sons, and from there John Woody was born in 1665 and on down till we get to his family. Let's pause right now.
Okay. After a brief intermission, we've got Sarah and William over there. So we were just talking about if anything interesting happened between the late 1700s and the early 1800s, and it's kind of more the same, but there is some documentation from the ship, the Speedwell. I think that's really cool. Where'd you find that at?
It was in the archives in Raleigh.
Wow, that's really neat. I'm definitely going to look up that ship, the Speedwell. It's probably some really cool old sailing ship. So, and then I guess in the 1800s in this book here, it looks like there's a good bit of Civil War history.
Here is a roster. George Silver, private. A roster of North Carolina soldiers. And George Silver was under Captain Benjamin Merrill, organized, no, I don't know what this is.
Still got my little buddy William over here. So we're just still chugging along, and I guess now we're in the Civil War section, and I was looking through this book, and it has original letters that your great grandfather wrote from the battlefields during the Civil War. So that's where we're going to pick up now.